Welcome to this week's episode of The Path Less Chosen, the podcast showing you the careers they don't teach you about in school. My name's Sol.
I'm Jamie.
And this week we have on Sidney Gray. And Sidney, or Sid as he's known, is a coffee enthusiast and also involved in the roasting of coffee. So Sidney's story starts at a young age, which I'm sure we'll get into, but he basically is now working in London as a wholesaler, but has a mini coffee empire in Shepherd's Bush and is looking to expand across the UK and across the globe. Jamie, I know this is an area that is potentially a bit foreign for you talking about coffee, but what sort of takeaways are you looking to get here?
I will confess to him pretty much immediately on the pod that I do not like coffee myself. But what I do really appreciate is that it has a massive impact, particularly on like the corporate world and the business world. You know, whenever you go for a meeting, it involves coffee. So I'm fascinated by someone who's actually made a career out of some kind of love for coffee and learning to roast it. And I don't even know what roasting is. So definitely keen to get into the details of it. And I think he's going to be an interesting guy.
Yeah, me and you both. Let's see if we can convince you to start drinking coffee by the end of the call. Let's get going. Okay, Sid, great to have you on, mate. If we could have a quick intro of what you're actually up to right now.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. At the moment, we're coffee roasters. We have espresso bars as well. We're based in Shepherd's Bush in West London. We're mainly wholesalers, supplying other cafes and restaurants and bars. But we also have an online store. And as I said, the espresso bars, both pretty close to each other, but just about half a mile down the road from each other. So we're very focused on Shepherd's Bush. Current aim is to be sort of the Shepherd's Bush coffee roastery. Coffee's, it's mainly focused in East London. I've always had a base here in Shepherd's Bush. So yeah, coming over from Cape Town, the main aim was to really to bring that Cape Town vibe into what I think is quite a similar vibe to Cape Town in Shepherd's Bush, sort of very multicultural, diverse, just a bit chaotic. It's really good fun. And yeah, I think we've been pretty welcomed especially since we brought the roastery in just 6-7 months ago into Shepherd's Bush. So yeah, that's the day to day at the moment. It's just growing that the wholesale side of the business.
I think obviously there's a big pathway that led you from Cape Town into London. But before we get into it, and I should probably start with a confession that I'm not a coffee drinker myself. So you'll have to enlighten me. I know. Yeah. You'll have to enlighten me on a few things. But I think it's probably just important as a bit of context. Your background is in the actual like roasting of coffee. So just explain a little bit to people about where that background is and what is involved in coffee roasting.
Yeah, fair. No, I mean, the amount of people that don't know that coffee roasting is a process it has been pretty amazing. Like probably me being ignorant and sort of being a bit of a coffee snob, being like, how the fuck do you think it comes out brown? But so basically coffee beans are grown in between the tropics in Africa, Central America, and Asia. It's effectively a seed inside a little berry. It looks like a little red berry. It's got 2 seeds in, which are the beans. We get them in 60-kilo sacks from wherever our house blend, which is our main coffee, is from Brazil, Guatemala, and Ethiopia. We roast them. It takes about 15 minutes in a machine that sort of gets up to about 200 degrees. There's a lot of nuances to roasting. I mean, you can really get very nerdy and scientific about it. But at the most basic level, you're basically making green stuff brown. I mean, that's what we always say. It's just, let's go make some green shit brown. Yeah, it's really a very simple process, which has, you know, this sort of sliding scale of how complex you want to make it. And everywhere in the world has a completely different way of doing it. You know, it's one of the most global commodities, probably not far behind oil and gas. You know, every country, every community have their own way of doing things. So there's really no right or wrong. We conform to a certain style, which sort of dominates most of London and Europe. But it's really quite basic, and so people can't believe how basic it is. But people also do believe that it comes off the plant brown, which does boggle my mind a bit sometimes. But yeah, it's we have it all on show here in Shepherd's Bush. So it's great to be able to show people the roasting process. and sort of help people understand, where their coffee comes from.
You'll have to come visit, because I actually did think it was like coffee beans that grew on trees, to be fair. I'm one of those people.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the basic process, but doesn't sound too basic. How the hell do you learn it to a point that you find it basic? Where did the learning aspect come from?
Yeah, so this guy, it all started, if we're going all the way back, it all started with this bloke called Judd, who, so in the coffee, in the style we roast, it sort of originates from Australia and New Zealand, mainly New Zealand, where Judd was from. He came over to Cape Town to sort of start his own coffee venture, having had his pretty long and early start in coffee as well. But he came over in like 2008 to set up a coffee roastery in Cape Town, where there was really nothing. Like there was no coffee culture at all. You had sort of one basic chain, a bit like Costa, and that was about it. And he told me, he really took a punt on me at about 11 or 12, taking the time to sort of first teach me how to be a barista, but then sort of later go into the roasting side of things, which is pretty incredible. But for someone who was already so successful in the coffee industry, had been doing it such a long time, to sort of spend time to teach a kid. And when you start off, I was starting off with fucking beans in a pan, really as simple as that. And then for my 14th birthday, I got a mini coffee roaster where you're just sort of pissing around on it, trying to figure it out. Really, it's such a trial and error sort of learning curve, and still is. Like every day, we're sort of trying to improve our coffee. And let me tell you, we put out some. We don't sell it, but we make some shocking coffee. But that is sort of part of the process to finding your own perfection, I guess. The roasting wasn't necessarily the first love. I think that the whole art of watching someone put the time and effort into making a perfect flat white or an espresso was really the thing that got me. The fact that someone's willing to pay what's now £3.50 for some bean juice blows my mind still. But like, there's a whole love that goes into it, and people are just obsessed with it, and it's really cool. It is really cool, and at such a young age, that really tugged on the heartstrings. Especially Judd, he was just such a cool guy. He was a mastermind in branding and selling a sort of lifestyle, and yeah, it was so infectious that I cannot love it. And from such a young age to find something to love like that was sick.
It's important to emphasize 11 and 12 is insane. The fact that you were like starting around that age, what on earth put you in the position at that age where you were suddenly in touch with this guy to be able to even start doing this stuff?
It was a weird one. I mean, I lived in a very small village in South Africa, and he was a cousin of someone who was in my year at school, and they had just opened a little coffee shop in our village, and the friend he was cousins of was a family friend of ours. And yeah, I started going to this little coffee shop in our village every day, every weekend. And yeah, it kind of just happened like that. Our whole family sort of would go there as well, which was a massive blessing in terms of me being able to get access to the right people, the head roaster and the baristas and stuff. So it was really a natural thing. But I think me going that often after school or on the weekends really sort of formed that relationship with Judd.
I love it because we often talk about people who are like 20 following their passions, and it's always kind of connected to a career and stuff. But like 11 and 12, that's pure, right? There's no thought about anything other than like, I enjoy doing this, so I'm gonna like push and keep doing it. How do you think you came about that? How were you aware of what you were doing every day, that you're like, I just love this and I'm just gonna turn up every weekend and keep doing it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it actually went quite quickly from being fascinated in coffee to being fascinated in the business of coffee, because they really are very different things. I think you get a lot of coffee guys who go and start a business in coffee, whereas I very quickly sort of established for myself that I was someone who was pretty capable in understanding the sort of business world from a really young age. It wasn't just the coffee thing that I was doing so early. You know, I was very much sort of trading, building portfolios with my dad and stuff from 13, 14 years old. And so I didn't want to categorize myself as just a coffee guy. You know, I really wanted to be a master at the business of coffee. And that's kind of how we sell ourselves now, is that we don't want to just give the best coffee product. We want to be able to give the best service to be able to start a coffee business, so run a great cafe. Like, we're there in all forms of support. So I was learning all those little things as well, which Judd again was so amazing at, which is where I really started to fall in love with it, was through the business side of things.
As a learning process, you had to do the business side, the coffee side, and then also, like, I guess, a front of house side as well. So talk us through a little bit about what were the most important things during that learning process. Do you think it was having Judd there for you as a mentor?
No, I think that's a good question. I think the most important part was understanding the power of wholesale. Weirdly, from the beginning, I think most people jump to the sort of most romantic side of the business, which is the espresso bar. Like, the amount of people I hear be like, when I'm older, I just want to have a wholesome cafe, you know, just own a wholesome cafe, have some cool customers and just hang out, which is awesome. And it's the bit I still love doing, you know, interacting with everyone. But the really powerful bit is the wholesale side. Like, it's such a slow process. It takes like months from when I first meet a potential wholesale customer to them actually changing. That process takes months. And I think these days people are quite impatient and want like a fast pace, or, you know, want someone to come in, buy a coffee, get out, you know, it's money done, transacted. So the long slog was really what Judd taught me, just building blocks, just one by one. And I think that's where the sort of real difference came quite early, you know, was looking at that one step before the coffee shops straight away.
That was really interesting, because I mean, my dream, as you just said, is to open a coffee shop on a beach in Cornwall and retire in my 40s. That couldn't sound better to me. So
how idyllic. I mean, that's my life.
It could. I genuinely couldn't be better.
Hey, so let me know when you do, and we'll sort you out some coffee.
Yeah, mate. I'll get some good coffee beans in. But was that in your mind when you were like, you know, 15, 16, 17, or were you really, really focused on the business aspect and the wholesale, or when did the wholesale side really take fruition in you?
I think when I got this mini coffee roaster for my birthday, I started selling. I had a little stall at a farmer's market on weekends, and I roast my own coffee for it, serve it out of a tuk-tuk with an espresso machine. But then there's loads of it's a very touristy village, and it's where all the vineyards are. There's loads of guest houses. So I had guest house owners coming and buying coffee for their guest houses, and had the old bar and restaurant. So I was already starting, like, kind of by accident at the beginning. And this roaster was tiny, so I just spent like hours after school with my top off on the patio roasting some coffee, as you do as a kid. And yeah, it kind of happened by accident, but that's where I really saw the power in it. You know, the espresso bar kind of became a secondary thing quite quickly. And so, I mean, I really wanted to drop out of school at about 16 to sort of really push on and make it an actual, you know, more legit thing. But yeah, I think young, and looking back, sort of young and silly, like leaving school to go do that would have been probably idiotic. But it was definitely on my mind. I wanted to put it into action like ASAP.
Do you think that was the kind of period of time then, around 16, where you were questioning whether you could leave school to genuinely do it? Was that the time where you thought, actually, I've been doing this now for 5-6 years and I love it, can I make a career out of it?
Yeah, it was frustrating. Like I was so, like, I felt like I was so ready to go, and I was sort of being held back at like my mindset was like, I'm at my prime, I need to milk this now. When yeah, I mean, there's no ways my parents were gonna let me drop out. But I was like having real conversations about it. But I ended up moving to the UK for my last 2 years of school from Cape Town, which was awesome, absolute blessing. I was really serious about leaving, and I don't think my mindset has really changed much since then. Like I think the whole way through I was only ever going to open a coffee roastery. It was just always going to happen. There was absolutely no doubt about it from when I got that coffee roastery at 14. Like it was just always going to happen. And if it didn't happen, it would have always been a what if question. No matter what I would have been doing now. Like it's just so set in stone.
See, that to me is crazy to have something. I mean, it's a very special story to have something when you're like 14 or 13 and you keep your mind fixed on it until what, you're 23, 24. So was there any distractions? Was there any, oh, I should go and make a bit of money in the city, I should go and maybe do something a bit more stable in the meantime, or did you never waver off that path?
No, I think I was far too stubborn. I mean, from 14, I was saying I'd never ever work for someone, which yeah, looking back, what a dick. But like, you know, I was fully thinking it. I was corporate wankers. There's no ways I'm gonna be getting involved in that. But like, I mean, yeah, I think I chatted so much crap. You know, that part of the whole sales thing, I guess, like building your own personal brand is all the chat. And so walking the talk became a really big thing. Like I did try and start a roastery in Cape Town when I was about 18. I wanted to sort of rival Deluxe. Like I thought I was being a fucking cool kid, but you know, I was told to wind my neck in by my dad because I wasn't making too many people happy by sort of flinging that around. So I tried to do that, didn't happen in the end. But yeah, so it got to a point where I was like, God, I'm talking so much crap. I've got to go and open this roastery. Otherwise, you know, you're just a talker, and who wants to be just a talker, sort of thing. So yeah, no, it's something I had to do at that point.
Yeah. I find it fascinating that you had that mindset age 14 that you were like, yeah, I'm not going to work for anyone. And what I'm really interested in is, because you mentioned you came over to England for those like last 2 years. I imagine, I don't know what it's like in South Africa, but the environment in like, schools in England, I think, is a lot less conducive to like that kind of mindset and that kind of idea. I mean, the whole premise of this podcast, and I guess what we experience at university, is like 99% of our mates go to the city and they start doing the corporate stuff. Like that is just the path that they go down. Did you find that there was any impact on your mindset when you came to England and you were like, yeah, maybe I should actually do the jobs that all of my mates here in England are talking about?
No, I absolutely loved it. You know, I mean, it definitely, yeah, I'm a big believer that everyone has like an ego, and it's okay to have an ego. And the sort of fact that, I mean, I was sitting in business class and we were sort of using my little business as like a case study or an example to like explain something. And I was like, yeah, you know, this is cool. And I love being different now. It's like my point of difference. If anything, it drove me more into it. Like there's just no ways I was going to follow this path of, you know, sort of great school, university, and then city. Like that, it just wasn't going to happen. I mean, let alone university, like that's also never going to happen. So if anything, it pushed me more into it. But had I been younger, probably something different, you know, it would have been different. I think that nurture would have been different, into a different mindset for sure.
Yeah, super interesting as well. I can imagine that there weren't many people around you that didn't consider university as the default post school, right?
Yeah, I mean, shit, you guys know as well. It is just the done thing now. And I was being someone the other day, and they're like, "Yeah, I dropped out of high school." I was like, "That is awesome." Whereas, like, you know, go back 20 years, people are like, "Oh shit, drop out over here." But like, I think something like that, a difference like that now is quite cool. I think, you know, it's so difficult to differentiate yourself. Even a master's these days is really, you're still in quite a big pool of people. And yeah, so there's just absolutely no way I was going to go to uni. And also I had very strong views. I had a lot of strong views talking about it now. very strong views at university sort of channeled your mind into sort of one way of thinking, and really just going out and figuring it out, failing a shitload would sort of, you learn just as much in a very different way.
Couldn't agree more. It makes me almost embarrassed that I did 3 years at uni now, right, Jamie? It's like
you guys benefit so much. Like if there was anything, it only spent 2 years at school here. You only meet so many people in 2 years, and on whether you like it or not, who just it matters. It so matters. You can get places so much faster, and yeah, it's definitely it wasn't all positives. Like definitely missing out on a big social circle made a difference.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting you touched on the point of who you know, because I guess that brings us along the story a little bit into actually working alongside Deluxe Coffeeworks, not against them. So take us a bit further down the story, how you ended up kind of partnering with them.
Yeah, so I lived right by their main coffee shop in the city. I'd go to their shop every day where they had their office, and Carl, the other founder, was there every day, and he was far more of the business side of things. Judd was the coffee and marketing side. And pretty quickly, I felt like I kind of got what I needed from Judd in terms of skill set. And he'd already made me fall in love with the brand. Carl was really interesting. He's Afrikaans, quite intense, but really, really clever. And he sort of quickly became my mentor. His sort of way of doing business was very African style, sort of quite cowboy-esque, but he also we had really long conversations about anything to do with coffee business, whatever it was. He had great background in property as well, and I said I was going to come over to London and set up a coffee roastery, and he suggested maybe doing something together. So at first I was going to come over and just do my own thing, but really I didn't have much interest in starting a new brand. It's a lot of time and effort and required skills that I don't think I had necessarily possessed. That you never see a brand the same way as everyone else sees it. So I really didn't have this urge to have my own thing, because I think that is quite a big thing these days as well. People want to have their own brand that they create, when really I just wanted to put all my time and effort into running a really, really well-run business. At the core of it, the structure, the bones was just solid. So not having to put money and time and effort into branding and fonts and all that crap, just fucking at the core business. And that's kind of what happened. So we teamed up and started Deluxe Coffeeworks London 3 years ago.
Wow. So I guess over that time and even before, you sound like you're covering a lot of bases. So what does it actually look like in terms of over the last 3 years, I guess, since it started? What things are you doing on like a day-to-day basis?
So believe it or not, roasting some coffee. But my main thing is sales. Getting someone to change their mind about coffee is pretty hard. We always say it's like an unspoken contract with coffee shops. Like, as long as you're serving the same coffee and you're there, people will come every day. Like that is just how it is. There's so few things like it, where someone will come every single day to get there, to buy your product. So trying to get someone to change supplier is really difficult, because they don't want to risk losing customers. So that's my whole thing, is just plugging away. It's pretty non-stop. Like, you just have to keep plugging away at whoever it is, mainly local coffee shops. We're very focused on keeping it in Shepherd's Bush. But yeah, that is me on a day-to-day. I've got a business partner, John, who joined me along the way, who does the coffee roasting. Now he's a lot smarter than I am. I told him what I knew at the time when we started, and he's sort of just progressed from there, and he's become a really, really top coffee roaster. And then I've got another business partner, Liam, who manages the coffee shops. So we've also got our roles. Mine is just building the blocks of the wholesale side of things, because really that's the scalable side of the business. Coffee shops can only grow so much, unless we just keep opening more. But baristas, fucking nightmare. So I'm just gonna stick it selling the beans.
Amazing. So do you have any people like Jamie who you need to convince about roasting coffee? And I'd love to see you try and convince Jamie that coffee should be the new thing to drink for him.
Well, look, I don't know if it is all that. I know that I should be selling it hardcore, but like coffee isn't for everyone. I'm not going to force any. I hate coffee snobs in London. There's so many of them who are like, "Oh, you're doing it wrong," or you have to do it this way. I'm just like, just do it how you like. Have 17 sugars if you want. Like, I'm not going to tell you to do it differently. Like, we'll make it how we like it. If you like it, amazing. Let's be friends. But it's all these guys who, it's like science labs, these coffee shops, and I can't be doing with that seriousness. Like, we take all the seriousness out of it. Come and hang. Granted, Jamie, I'm afraid we don't have much tea or any of that stuff.
I don't drink tea either, so no,
Oh,
you're playing a losing battle, sadly. Maybe hot chocolate.
Oh my god, what do you
Sure,
drink?
I know.
He's a child.
I know.
Child.
That's the
Got
problem.
your Capri Sun. Everyone can be way too over the top about it. Like, just do it how you want to do it. Yeah, we'll be there.
You've obviously started off as something that when you're 11 and 12, a lot of this that you wouldn't have thought about, you probably didn't even know what a coffee snob was. So I want to know, like, as you've gone along the way, have you lost any of that kind of passion where you just genuinely like love roasting the coffee because it's now become a business, or is it something that you still have been able to preserve while actually doing the business side and having it as a career?
If I'm going to be completely honest, I think the love and passion is very much for the business of coffee, not coffee itself, which I think sounds, I think your purists would want to be hearing that, your love for the craft of coffee is what drives you on a day-to-day. But I really think there is a craft in running a business, and especially a coffee business. And there has to be a perfect harmony in the care for the product and, what's feasible at the end of the day.
Right.
And it's a constant battle anyway in the coffee industry with fair trade, the farmers getting their fair treatment. And it is ultimately a third world product supplying the first world. So there are those constant battles, but yeah, I think I'm fully in love with the craft of running a coffee business, a coffee roastery. Not so much coffee itself. Right. I still love coffee as much as I did. Still is fascinated by it. Still keeps throwing fresh challenges every day. So that love definitely hasn't gone. But I don't know if the passion is where you would necessarily expect it to be. It was always the love for and want to running a coffee business rather than working in coffee itself.
Okay.
And do you find that because you've picked the kind of business of coffee that sometimes you fear the instability or the perhaps pressure on finances, because that is exactly how you're making money, and whether there's changes in the market, stuff like COVID, all those sort of things can really affect you. How do you view that as a kind of career for yourself?
I mean, it has had a really tough time recently, but I don't think it's any harder than any other industry that relies on commodity pricing. Like, it has been volatile, but it's such a such a huge commodity globally and in the UK that it's still pretty steady. We're pretty on top of things in terms of on top of the changes that are constantly happening. So instability, I haven't really felt like we've been put under that much pressure in that regard. COVID was obviously a shit one. We did decide to start in the middle of it, which is kind of our own fault, but I loved it. Like, I mean, shit, having been chained up for 2 years, I was so raring to go. That COVID really wasn't much of an issue. It did change the way we started. We started in I can never say this phrase, in an industrial estate, rather than in a shop or in a retail front like we have now. So yeah, there are definitely challenges, but honestly, instability, I mean, I guess it's just your regular startup business instability, you know, that nothing too dramatic.
I think probably just to finish off, it'd be interesting to hear, where do you see like the next 10 years then for this?
So next 5-10 years, I think we've always wanted to use Deluxe, or at least I've always wanted to use Deluxe as a base to go off and do other ventures. Coffee works so well with so many different things, like it can really be a supporting role. So we're looking, I don't want to say too much now because it is kind of like in the process of happening at the moment. So I don't want to say something that might happen but then won't. But yeah, I think we're looking at other roasteries elsewhere in the UK, maybe outside of the UK, and some other sort of hospitality focused venues. So yeah, lots happening. 10 years, probably be looking to sell at some point. I have been in the coffee industry a long time already. It has been my focus for a long time. I mean, when I say I've been working in coffee for 10 years already, kind of scary. That's kind of all I've known. Deluxe is kind of all I've known. So yeah, definitely would like to move on to a different industry at some point. The love at the end of the day is business. It's not coffee in its entirety. But yeah, I'm not ready to let go of that yet. So we still got a lot of work to do before doing any of that.
So basically, we ask all our guests at the end 3 things, and if you were to go back to the start, we'd like to know one thing you do the same, one thing you do differently, and one thing you'd tell yourself to motivate yourself.
I think the one thing I wouldn't change is the sort of sacrifice of time at such a young age. I think at the time it probably sucked a bit that I was missing out on regular school life stuff, but man, it was, I don't know, it really, I think, set me up for the rest of my career so far. Call it a career, but like, yeah, definitely set me up for that sort of path from the get-go. And yeah, being different and on a different sort of wavelength pretty early was pretty cool for me. Don't know if everyone finds it that cool. The one thing I would change is harder, because it's such a sort of series of events that sort of led to one. So if you to change one thing, would we be where we are now? I don't know, but I would probably say I think I probably should have stuck out that time before starting Deluxe London a bit longer to really meet some more people. London's a fucking big place, and you just want to know as many people as you can, because it can get running a business is so lonely. So you really want to build that network from the get-go as much as you can. And the motivation, the thing that always motivated me at the beginning was age. Like, it's probably become quite apparent that age was a big motivator. It was like the thing that I thought could make me better than everyone else was that if I did what an adult could do but younger, like up until 4 or 5 years ago, that was the motivation. But now I think the motivation is I want to be able to have a big effect on the world, whether that's financially or with my time and effort. But I need to be able to afford to do that, whether it is time or money. So really, I want to do as well as I can now to be able to have that effect later. So yeah, that's really the drive on a day-to-day now. Although I've never really had an issue getting up in the morning. It's just you know, I love my life. Like it's really good fun. I have such special people around. You meet the coolest people through the cafe. So really motivating yourself on a day-to-day isn't hard. But yeah, I think that would be the motivation, is to have an effect in the world. I'm sometime down the line.
Love that. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good message to finish on, and it was just actually really interesting to hear like the kind of conversation around it, because I fully appreciate like the impact it has on the world. It's like a massive commodity. Everything you're talking about and the way you've gone into it from such a young age is a really fascinating story. So I appreciate your time and sharing that with us.
No, at all. No, thank you so much for having me, guys. No, you guys are doing a cool thing. I like it.
Great episode as always. Enjoyed chatting to Sid and his career, which is mental to think he's already been in the coffee industry for like 10 years. Like, what a ridiculous thing to be able to say as a 22, 23-year-old. So yeah, anyway, without further ado, let's get going with the takeaway. So Jamie, I'll hand that over to you.
I think biggest one for me as like a bottom line of it was just to be really stubborn. I really liked that the way he kind of approached it. He said that he decided when he was only 14 years old that he was never going to work for someone. And I like the way he approached it, where he somehow managed to do it in a humble way, but he was very clear that he was like, he has no problem with the fact that he has a slight ego. And then something he mentioned at the end is that this was something that was going to make him better than somebody else. And he was stubborn to that belief from the age of 14. And it's now brought him to actually doing something where he could have easily got distracted, whether it was in England or during school or whenever, by the people he was around. He was never, ever going to work for someone from the moment he decided that at age 14. I thought that's exactly why he's on a path less chosen right now.
Spot on. Nothing more to add really on that. I think it was very, very clear that you had that, and obviously I'd written that down. So thanks for taking that. I will actually on top of that, as the second point, and it's definitely a takeaway we have with a lot of people, but it's so important to highlight when they mention it a lot, is the fact that just doing things and not being a talker. He always, like, it's good to be stubborn, but a lot of people might be stubborn internally. But if you're actually not going out and doing things to fuel that stubbornness and that ego, then I think it's a lot of talk and not a lot of doing. So a big takeaway was definitely how much he put his foot forward in everything he was doing by setting up things and creating collabs and those sort of things. So yeah, I love that part, and it definitely an add-on to the stubbornness aspect.
And he used the cliche, of course, like talking the talk, walking the walk. But there was an interesting point in time where he said, yeah, I need to stop just talking. I like that idea.
Spot on. Why, as you've taken mine, why don't you want to finish on the third?
As a final one, I think maybe one of the biggest things we can take away from him that I don't think we're going to get with a lot of people, and perhaps is even more of like a unique way of going down a path less chosen, and isn't something he said, but just like the background in his story, is that if you are starting something at this like really young age and you stay true to it throughout, that can take you down a career. I mean, he is now, like you mentioned it at the start of this, he's now had like over 10 years experience in this industry, which is insane for like someone that age. And that's the reason why he's quite successful in it, and he's still managed to have like the love for it. So yeah, I think it's the message to take away is, you know, the earlier you start going down this path less chosen, the quicker it's going to come to fruition.
Yeah, I like, my only add on that is that it's almost like retrospectively very interesting as well. If people are listening to this and not really sure what they want to do or what their purpose is looking at what you were interested in at the ages of 10 to 15, and that's quite a good example of, or quite a good tester of what you actually really love, as opposed to what you connect to a career, income, stability, ego, all those sort of things. So finding something that you love early, maybe something that you were passionate about when you were a kid. If you're lucky enough to be Sid and have 10 years experience at the age of 23, then do that. But yeah, I couldn't agree more about getting onto that path as quickly as possible.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm happy to summarize then. For the first takeaway, just be stubborn with your beliefs if you want to go down a path less chosen. The second one, to use a cliche, if you're going to talk the talk, make sure you walk the walk. And the third one, the earlier you can start a path less chosen, the better.
Lovely. Okay, cool. And as always, very appreciative of the support. We put out a few LinkedIn posts a few weeks ago for guest ideas. And if anyone knows anyone or anyone's listening and would like to come on, please do drop us a message on our Instagram, our personal Instagrams or our personal LinkedIns, and we'd be happy to chat. Anyone who's following their passion, doing something different, or just doing something really cool that you think would make a great guest, would be very appreciative if we could be put in contact with them or have a chat with you.
Lovely. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.